Mario is, Mario.
Did he freeze?
You frozen or you're doing it on
Froze.
purpose?
He looks good, frozen. Mario. No.
You can just hold that.
No, he's not frozen.
We can't hear you.
You're muted,
Hey, Mario, we got potato chips up. Drop them off at your house tonight.
We can't hear you.
There we go. How about now?
Okay.
Send up some food.
Potato chips later.
Yep, chocolate chip cookies too.
Okay. Okay, roll call. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? So second?
I'll second.
Second, okay.
Wait a minute, who was first and who was second, please?
Fiona was first.
And
Casey was second, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Approval of minutes. I just gave you the,
February.
February, March is in the packet.
correct. So I just gave you,
February
February.
4th? Yeah. Do you want to approve separately?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay. So February 1st,
February 1st, I just gave it to you.
February 4th, but
Fourth.
first.
It's headed agenda, we should do something about that.
Who's on first?
Can I have a motion to approve the February 4th minutes?
So moved.
Fiona, can I have a second?
Second.
Second, Gary.
Gary.
Discussion, any, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the March
4th,
4th minutes?
I'll move it.
Armin.
Have a second? Second, Pat.
Pat, thank you.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Public participation. Members of the public and staff may bring to the committee's attention information, ideas and matters of concern related to all duties and responsibilities of this committee. The committee will not allow comments regarding specific staff members or personal grievances. The time for individual remarks will be apportioned according to the number of speakers and will be limited to 5 minutes per speaker unless extended by the chair. Anybody wants to talk? Any members? No. Okay. Also, in your packet, I did give you the RFP for the commissioning services. So we went out to bid. It was on the DAS website and it was in the Waterbury Republican. Karen has helped me. She's doing it. And we have an addendum that will be going out very shortly.
Early next week.
Early next week. And the bids are due on the 7th at noon. Okay, so I'll let you know what's happening there. Amy and Amy. Ready?
Ready.
Ready? Okay. We're gonna do program phase report. We've had a number of meetings with Amy and the crew. Mario and the two Sues and myself have been involved with that. So Amy, why don't you go ahead? And everybody will get this, everybody did get their last presentation I sent to everybody. So we'll send out this presentation tomorrow or Saturday. We'll get it. Okay.
Allison just is
Oh.
gonna make me a host and then I'm gonna,
You're all set.
thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for having us back. We've really worked hard for the past 3 weeks together with your administration and Ed and Mario and the rest of the team, the CM and owner's rep. So we have tonight a presentation that shows the final version of the program that we've come to at this point, and conceptual designs that Julia will join me after Amy's done presenting the program, and we'll run through those. Also, I think as a participant, Bill Cohn, our landscape architect, is also on the Zoom, so he'll also discuss the site locations. So tonight I'll turn it over to Amy first, and then we'll look for a decision from you if you so choose, for where on the property the building should be sited. Okay, Amy, all set.
So we reviewed these last time. Here are the project goals that were created based on the input from your community. Again, their topics are, range from community pride to timeless design and making sure that we are providing a building that will evolve over time as your curriculum and community evolves. Experiential learning, providing spaces that your students can prepare themselves for furthering their education in higher education, or to be able to jump right into a career after graduation. And so providing those types of spaces that will do both of those things. And then sustainable actions, making sure that we are being mindful throughout the entire process with regard to infusing appropriate systems and design philosophies to provide a sustainable project. And so in the review of the program today, I think you will see these themes thread throughout the types of spaces that have been generated from the program. So we updated the benchmarking. This represents the benchmarking for the high school specifically. You notice that this time we are looking at 2 different bar ranges. This is measuring net square foot per student in each of the departments within the high school, and they're listed across the bottom from left to right. And each of the bars represent a benchmark range we would typically see for net square foot per student in either a themed pathway or magnet type themed school, or in the blue range, which is more of a comprehensive high school. And you can see how some of those, like for instance in the CTE pathways, when you're looking at a comprehensive high school, the themed and specialized environments that they would provide tend to be on the smaller or smaller range in the blue, whereas in a magnet school where you may have a lot of very specialized spaces, that can range very, very high in the amount of square footage per student. And keeping in mind that those students may be taking less courses in core classes and actually taking more electives in those specialty environments. And so therefore, that is why that range is so different. The black dot represents where the program has your program for the high school today. So you can see we're right smack in the middle of that pathway range for both the comprehensive and the theme schools. The classrooms and the sciences might be on the lower end of the range, but again, that's because as we move from your existing dated building where you're teaching those courses, some of those courses are going to be offloaded and be taught in these wonderful new immersive environments that are programmed specifically for the CTE pathway in the way of the business pathway, ROTC, STEM, et cetera. And we'll get into detail about that in farther along. So we wanted to make sure that we documented where you fell amongst the benchmark range for a variety of high schools, and so you can see how you're measuring up. The next one where we added the middle school benchmark, which we haven't seen yet, so we were able to sort of generate this for you. And because middle schools are typically delivered in a similar fashion, they didn't have very specialized magnets. They do in some cases, but for the most part, they are more comprehensive in nature. And you can see that the black dot is falling within the range across the board, except for one, and that is food service. And that is because the kitchen and the servery and all of that square footage is actually being tallied within the high school proper. because that amount of square footage is a shared entity between the two facilities. And so that makes sense for that to fall below. So that's all that's measuring is the seating area that's designated for the middle school. Do you have any questions on either of these?
I guess I do.
One questioning,
Okay.
On the benchmarking for the high school, is it, I understand academic and science were down low because some of that will be caught in the pathways. Is there a way to build in that assumption to have us, I guess, to I'm not articulating this right, but to, therefore, this is really measuring space, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much that we're under standards necessarily.
Not at all. No. This is just, go
Black-
ahead.
Yeah, it's just a black mark there. So the fact that we're mid-range for the CTE and the pathways overall has us still making sure we have enough academic space.
right?
Absolutely.
So, Amy, you'll share that when we get to the academic, there's gonna be a separate slide that helps describe how many seats there are provided in your school for all of your students. So you can compare that with the total amount of students and make sure that after that slide, make sure that you understand what this.
Yeah, yeah, I will pause there to make sure. And also, I would have loved to have taken you through the course mapping exercises that I have taken your executive committee through. But I was encouraged to not bring that amount of detail to this meeting. We actually mapped every course for the high school and for the middle school to understand exactly the question that you're asking, making sure that every specific course has a place to be taught and that we have the right amount based on the class schedule that has been identified. So we have gone through all of that utilization analysis, but it wasn't entertaining enough to provide in this particular meeting. But we have gone through all that effort. And so this here is just measuring the square foot per student. And that's all that it's measuring. But we will have the right number of seats. We will have the right number of spaces to accommodate the curriculum because we mapped it to your curriculum.
Good question though, because I know it's alarming. You don't ever want to be at the low end.
Right, it does look.
But I will point out that Amy called the pathways the middle, but really you're at the very high end of the blue bar. And you are a comprehensive high school, which is the blue bar. You happen to be providing quite a bit of robust pathway space. And so you're at the very top of that range for pathways in a comprehensive school, which compares to the center range of the range for schools that are magnet schools and technical schools and pathway driven. So I think that's really what the takeaway is from this one. And then you'll see how it fits for your building.
So to support the answer to your question is another way that we track to make sure that we're not overbuilding or underbuilding is to actually take a look at the number of seats that we're providing for the number of students that will be in this building. So for the 935 students that we are designing to for this facility, here is where those numbers are falling. So in the upper right-hand corner, in the table, right-hand corner, not left, in the right-hand corner, it actually, it lists the different types of learning environments. So academic classrooms, the pathway classrooms, science labs, ELL classrooms, life skills and thrive, which are the special education classrooms, visual arts, performing arts, and PE stations or areas where students can be. We actually are tracking how many seats, so how many students you can teach. So you will actually have 1,430 seats for your 935 students. And so on the left-hand side of this slide, typically in a high school, we would see the average target range is about 1.4 instructional seats of any kind per student. Yours is ticking a little bit higher, and we would expect that based on the fact that you have a robust pathway, numbers of pathways, and the spaces were provided for those pathways have generated seats for students to be taught in. So we are providing a little bit more in the way of seats because of that. Also, you have a very robust a special ed program, and those seats are also factored in here. So that we would expect that to be just a little bit higher than the average, and that is where you are today. So you definitely have wiggle room for your students within the building that we're providing today. And then the breakdown is also showing the same thing in the upper right-hand corner down in a bar chart on the bottom.
There's a question, Amy?
Yep.
I apologize. So would that mean that we would have the capacity for 1,438 students in that building if we had, just say, students coming from other towns wanting to attend our school? Or is our capacity different than our seat size?
Your capacity is different than your seat. So if you think about a student's schedule, they will need to be able to cycle through all their math classes, and then they go to gym and that sort of thing. So if you actually had 1,400 students in each one of those, and then they swapped around, you'd have very, very little flexibility in scheduling and providing personalized education, which is the direction in which your district is going, hence the pathways. However, also mapped in, when we did the mapping exercise that we described earlier, we also identified that within those classrooms, you have the ability to grow a couple sections here and there based on the number of classrooms that were provided. So when we did that calculation, we identified that we can accommodate the number of students that need to get through all of the math courses, as an example, but then also by adding that last 1 or 2 classrooms in, that also tipped you over the edge, so you have the ability to grow by a couple sections, as it were, for each of those spaces. So you're not sort of capped right at the tip top. We also have the ability for a section or 2 to be added for each subject. So yes, you can take in some students from other schools. I don't think you would want to go up to the 1,400.
No. More questions?
Yep, go ahead.
Then how many students difference is it then? How many more than the 930?
So, Amy, can I take this for a second, just to try to dumb down your answer because I've heard you, explain this before. The 1,400 seats is really a result of being able to schedule things. So one student might take more music classes than another student. One student might take more engineering classes than another, and so on, and art and all of your other pathways. So in order to build the flexibility so that those students can take their general requirement for English, alongside all of their other peers, and be able to take different electives, you need to provide some flexibility, because from year to year, that demographic is going to change. And so that's what the seat count of 1,400 is really doing for you. It's allowing those 935 students that we are planning for to go to all different classes and pathways.
But would it accommodate if we had 200 more students?
So I was just doing the math when Amy was answering that. So if you were to take the 1,430 seats and divide that by 935 students, that gives you the 1.53 that we're showing in the table in the upper left-hand corner. Our recommendation, based on what we've seen in other high schools, is if you were to take that 1,430 seats and divide that by 1,000 students, you get to be about 1.43. So you're still teetering just above that average. So I would say somewhere around 1,000 is probably the magic number to still allow you to have the flexibility to schedule like Amy just described.
70 more students or 65 more
Correct.
students? Okay, gotcha.
Right, and it's always a little,
Yeah,
give and
absolutely,
take, but
absolutely.
yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Sue Ferguson has a questioning.
Okay.
Oh, Robin.
Oh, Robin, Sue's here, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
How many classrooms are there, including the specialty spaces? Does that 55 include our specialty spaces?
It
Like-
does, the pathways are described here.
Okay.
So you have 7 pathway classrooms. You have a lot of other pathway spaces that are not going to be treated as classrooms, like storage, and the engineering lab has an area for equipment.
Like, I'm just thinking of like advisory and clubs and.
Mhm.
Oh, good question. I can actually map that for you to make sure you have a seat for every student, obviously not counting the gym for advisory. So I can actually do that for you and map that out for you.
Okay, I just can't I envision where they got like, if we have 80 teachers and they each have an advisory. And they, we run clubs and things like that.
Right. So we can actually map that advisory for you in the spaces so you can see where those 935 students would be able to sit in this program. Absolutely, we can certainly do that for you.
Mhm. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next slide unless we have more questions. Okay.
Sorry, I'm writing my note down to do that.
Okay.
Okay, so here is the overall high school program. It's changed slightly since the last time you saw that. You can see that the 3 components of the program that are identified to be shared with the middle school in a couple different ways are the back of house food service. So that would be the kitchen and servery. That amount of square footage will serve the high school and will serve the middle school. In the bottom right-hand corner, the auditorium and the stage and its support components, dressing rooms, control room, things like that. That allocation of space is to be shared between the 2 schools. And then the building support, so all of the snow removal, the trash and recycling and things like that are to be shared between the 2 schools. They will have their own janitor's closets and things like that within each portion of the building, but the big sort of head end areas for building support will be shared between the 2 schools. And then this is the middle school, totaling 74,900 net square feet. The different colors represent the different departments. So we're going to go through each of the different departments on each slide. The high school and the middle school are represented. Some of the highlights are bulleted there, the takeaways. So this is representing the main office, the nurses suite and guidance suite within the high school. And at the middle school, it's the main office, the nurses suite, and then the 2 house administration groups that will be distributed with their house. We've identified meeting space so that you have the appropriate amount of meeting space for when parents and visitors come into the building for PPT and 504 meetings, as well as a college and career center for the high school, and mail room, security, and that type of thing for a 21st century learning school. Within special education for the high school and the middle school, again, some very specialized programs have been identified for us. So within the middle school, you have 3 programs of Thrive, Voices, and Life Skills that would be applied there. And the yellow boxes represent the learning environments that some of those programs will be in for the majority of their day, and including some of their storage space and support space. The other smaller ones are more sort of pull-out instruction and resources room that will be distributed throughout the classroom so students can have access to those depending on the period they need that. At the high school, we have 2 of those programs, Life Skills and Thrive are at the high school, but we also have resource rooms that will be distributed throughout the classroom areas for pull-out instruction. Within the office space, little blue boxes that you see represent meeting space and workspace for your special education staff, where they can go and do their reports and keep the files that they're required by the state of Connecticut to maintain on each of their students. And some of the light blue represents some of that meeting space that I described. Library Media Center for both schools here, both in addition to stacks area and some soft seating like you see in the middle of the photograph, we'll also have a full class area where you can bring a full class in and have a teaching wall presentation area like you see in the back right-hand side of the photograph. Both will have that. They both have an IT sort of support staff or station embedded. And at the high school, we also are accommodating some historical archive storage for some more historical things from Torrington High School. Classrooms on the left-hand side are represented the high school classrooms, and on the right-hand side are the middle school classrooms. And of course, I don't have the numbers right off the top of my head, but I have my program in front of me. So give me 1 second and I can say exactly how many. I should have had that on there. So the middle school has 23 classrooms and the high school has 28 classrooms, 26 and 2 ELL classrooms. And the middle school also has 2 ELL classrooms. All the classrooms in both schools will be sized for 24 students. They will have common technologies. They will have controllable natural light. And in addition to the classrooms, the faculty in both schools will have access to faculty workrooms where they'll be able to make private phone calls in phone booths, either if they're making phone calls home to mom and dad, or if they need to make private phone calls on their own. They will have locker space where they can lock up their personal items like their coat, their purse, those types of things. Workroom area where they can actually make copies and print and that sort of thing. We'll come together as a department and work, have a monitor to support a meeting, or just be able to work during their planning period. And so these are provided in both schools. The sciences for both schools, we have a mix of wet and dry lab configurations. We have both a mixture of fixed and flexible layouts, so that for things like an example is some physical sciences, or even in physics, you want the ability to have movable furniture in the center with flexible infrastructure, power coming from overhead. Your plumbing tends to be at the perimeter. And then you may have something like you see in the larger photograph where those stations are fixed, but the students all have eyes on the instructor at the demonstration table and the teaching wall as needed, but then they also have enough room to do their experiments in that same location. Maximize readable surfaces, and of course, we always want to make sure that we have the opportunity to put science on display in the school as you're walking through the corridors and that sort of thing. So as we look at the pathways of education, public safety and criminal justice, health and wellness, business, applied arts, and STEM and high tech, the following spaces are identified as specific learning environments for these pathways. So where you might have finances might be taught in a math classroom today, they will be taught in a business classroom potentially in the future. The same thing with engineering, that may be taught in a physics lab today, that can be taught in an engineering lab as we have it proposed. Again, these were all mapped with the courses and the coursework that you have, and then also realizing that these programs will evolve and grow, and so they have built in some expansion space in the number of seats for these pathways. So the first two at the high school on the left-hand side is the business pathway, 2 learning environments that we are focusing on data visualization. So if you're showing a lot of data and fine point numbers, that sort of thing, we want to make sure that students have the ability to see that easily. So that might mean a little bit more technology in those rooms, plug and play technologies for the instructor as well as the students, and then an overseeing ability to the school store. And the school store might have a sort of mobile component to it, so that if you wanted to bring a portion of your wares down to where the gymnasium is during a championship game, you have the ability to do so. On the right-hand side is the education pathway. We have a preschool for 18 preschool children and the appropriate support spaces for that in the way of a dedicated bathroom, a dedicated entry point where those parents can drop off and bring those children in. They will have direct access out to a play yard for those children. And then in addition to that, we have a classroom for 18 high school students to be able to observe students. And they will also cycle into the preschool and work with those kids one-on-one during that class. Health and wellness on the left-hand side is a very interesting pathway. It covers a lot of ground. It has the culinary labs. Amy, did you go ahead?
I might have, sorry. And the screen is delayed from my computer.
Yeah, I think so. So culinary lab where students are actually learning how to prepare healthy meals and learn about food and nutrition. We also have 3 health classrooms, a sports medicine lab where in an image down at the bottom left where students will be able to actually in their sports medicine course be able to work on equipment or with equipment that those folks in the industry would also work on. And in a matter of saving square footage, we are providing this space, and this would be located near the gymnasium. So after school, the athletic trainer that you have that come and tape up your athletes would have the ability to use this environment at the same time. So we're not building 2 rooms for 2 separate purposes, one before school and one after, or one during school, one after school. We are using the same environment, but we will be providing the trainer their own storage space so they have their own supplies separate from the instructional supplies. Also a mobile cafe cart, so as the foods component has the ability to make food. If they wanted to provide food during intermission during a performing arts in the evening, they have the ability for this mobile cart to move down to where the auditorium is and set up and display their wares there. On the right-hand side is the STEM and high-tech pathway, providing a design, sort of the whole, encapsulating the entire engineering process in designing of the widget and the creating of the widget, and then also circling back to testing, et cetera. So we have a computer lab that has computer-aided design, large output printers and plotters, and then directly adjacent to that will be an engineering lab where the students can actually tinker and put those things together in the way of an engineering makerspace. And then also in support of that is an equipment bay that potentially would have a rolling garage door, so that if the instructor had that open that day and the students are working, they can cycle through and work on larger pieces of equipment, and then have the ability to close that garage door if they're just working on small hand tools within the makerspace that day. We want to make sure that we have transparency through all these different types of pathway spaces to sort of intrigue anybody who might want to take some classes. In addition to the graphic communications lab, which is a PC-based lab, we would also have another lab that is Mac-based, which is more supportive of your graphic arts and those types of software. They don't necessarily interchange. CAD stuff does not necessarily work well on Mac Mac hardware and vice versa. ROTC providing a classroom for 30 students, cadets, and a pretty robust storage room where they are storing 200 to 300 uniforms, and in addition to their very secure storage for their replica guns that they have for drill, their flags that they have hats, shoes, belts, et cetera, that need to be stored in that storage room. In that room, we'll also have a changing area for fitting of uniforms, an office for the colonel, and a workstation for the instructor. On the right-hand side, we have a shared space that the entire school can utilize, and also the community. It is a team-based learning theater where that could seat between 60 and 80 people. We have heard through all of the focus groups the different types of functions that this space could support. Model UN for the social studies department, student debates in any capacity, professional development for your staff, community meetings like the one you're sitting in now, and then any of the pathways that will have any kind of capstone project where the student is presenting out and have the ability for them to plug in for technology, have space at that table in the front to be able to display a model or something like that, and then have the ability to have a very sort of close-knit lecture hall that also allows a group environment. So if students could work in groups, as you see in the inset photograph at the top of the screen. And so this would support all of them. This is a resource for the entire school. At the middle school, a very similar series of spaces were identified as a feeder program for that STEM and high-tech pathway at the high school, providing them a design computer lab, which would be the smaller space in the middle, and then two maker construction type spaces on either side. They could be outfitted similarly. They could be outfitted one different, one sort of more high tech and drone and robotics. The other might be a little bit more messy, yet to be determined, but those two maker type spaces supported by a design space and the appropriate storage needed. For arts at the high school, we have 3 art studios, which include a ceramics sculpture studio and then 2 foundations rooms, again with supply storage and separate student project storage and a kiln room. The middle school has 2 art studios with a smaller computer lab in the center that supports 10 computers to allow students to cycle through when they're working on those types of projects. And they also have a kiln and supply and student storage, student project storage. For performing arts for each of the schools, we have a mix of spaces to support your wonderful program. A band room for both the high school and the middle school. We have an orchestra room identified for the middle school, a small ensemble room for the high school. Sorry, Amy, I'm making you go back and forth. Both schools have a music technology and keyboarding room where they're teaching piano and keyboards, and also have the ability to do some recording in that type of space. And instrument storage for all of the strings and all of the different instruments that you have, whether they live in the school or if student is coming to school with their trombone and they need somewhere for it to sit while they're going to all their classes. We have storage for that as well, in addition to all of your marching components, like you see in the bottom left-hand corner there, in addition to uniforms. And an auditorium that would be shared by both schools. The target seat number is 470 for the auditorium. We will also be providing an orchestra pit in front of the stage, and then control room, dressing rooms, and scene and furniture storage. And for phys ed and athletics, we are providing a high school gymnasium with a 84 by 50 foot striped premier basketball court and 1,000 seats and bleachers. Those are the driving force on that gymnasium. The middle school gymnasium is also an 84 by 50 foot striped basketball court with 150 seats and bleachers identified there. And then a variety of PE and athletic locker rooms and team rooms, PE instructor offices, in addition to changing spaces that are shared between PE instructors, officials, and coaches, since they use them at different times. And then equipment, outdoor equipment, indoor equipment, uniform storage, and those types of support spaces. And food service, this is shown as a combined. So on this slide, you have in the center, the 2 boxes that are shown in the middle are the kitchen and servery. And then the smaller box to the top is representing the middle school dining, and the larger box to the bottom is representing the high school dining, sized on 3 lunch waves for each school, 310-ish seats for the high school, 215-ish seats for the middle school. And then we each have dedicated staff dining in addition to those spaces for each school. And we hope to capitalize on that seating area for a variety of functions, whether it's student commons or something like that. And then lastly, but not least, is building support, sort of the stuff that holds everything together, making sure that we have the right amount of space for when it comes to the loading dock and gathering all the trash and recycling from both buildings, supply storage for all of the janitorial areas throughout the entire facility, including the central offices portion of the building, vehicle storage for the tractors and I think there's a golf cart or something that's on site. Allocation of space for that crossroads type lobby area where folks will be coming together, and we have sort of an area where we can sort of bring the community together. And then the allocation of space for the student lockers, where we will be providing about 1,700 lockers. We usually do the total amount of students that we're designing for, which is 1,580, I think it is. And we usually do a 10% increase for fluctuation depending on the area and where those lockers fall. So here is a summary of where we are today and where we've come from. So the left-hand side represents the ed spec at 196,873 net square feet. And it was established at the time at 284,295 gross square feet. At the last time we met, the program was at 209,000 net square feet. And by generating a building with a 63.5% efficiency, that building would have had to have been 329,000 gross square feet. We've had since then continued to try to bring this down closer to our target of 180,000 net square feet. Today, we are at 203,355 net square feet of program space, which is about 6,500 square feet over where you were when you started with the ed spec. But that is about 16,800 square feet over where we would typically see a building of 284,000 square feet. So by applying the 63.5% efficiency factor to the 203,000 net square foot of program, the overall building for the middle school and high school has grown to 320,244 gross square feet. On the right-hand side, the central offices we right-sized that based on the staff working with Ed and Sue. And so that the right-hand bar chart represents where that sits today. So that's 5,500 net square feet and generating about 6,300, typo there, sorry, 6,300 gross square feet that would be added to the 320,000 gross square feet. That is where we are today with the program.
So this is recapturing the diagram that you saw in the last slide where Amy described the net square feet. And then with the grossing factor, that includes all the mechanical rooms, the building support, like electric rooms, data closets, corridors, linking everything together, staircases, and anything else that students don't sit in, but is necessary for a building. That brings us to the 320 that Amy described on the last slide. We add that to the 6,000 or so for the central office. And so your total square footage for the program for this entire facility will be 326,600. And that again, as I mentioned at our last meeting, this is based on an average gross up factor. And so as we move forward with schematic design, after sharing our conceptual design with you tonight, we will continue to work to make the building more and more efficient. We'll try to position the mechanical rooms so that they can more easily distribute all of the necessary systems throughout the building and try to consolidate everything and drive that efficiency up and thereby getting a little bit lower square footage incrementally as we design. But as of right now, we are showing an overage from the original ed spec feasibility study numbers. And that's described here. Total square foot over the ed spec that was in the feasibility study is about 34,000 gross square feet. As we move forward also, so that's one thing we're tracking is the total size of the building, because that's what the CM will be releasing for bid. You know, you have to build the whole building, not just the program areas. We'll also be going to a meeting with the state on April 7th. And at that time, CSG and Ed and Mario and Sue will be with us. And we will petition the state for the maximum reimbursement possible. And so we'll work together to drive up the reimbursement from the state so that the city of Torrington's share of the cost of the facility is as minimized as we move forward. So all of that is in progress, and we'll have more to report after April 7th. So, Bill Cohen, are you on the?
Before we go over the site,
Oh,
I just
sure.
want to hand out, again, Mario and I met with the mayor. We talked about the lower parking lot and so forth. So we have a letter from the great town attorney. Yeah. So the letter's here, the map's here, and you can read it. They said it's our property and so forth. So why don't you share? There's enough there. There's enough here.
Ask one question in the meantime about.
Yeah, no problem.
So as a status update on budget versus square footage, I know we don't have a budget yet, but in your past history, on a project like this, how do we look in terms of where we stand today versus where we know we need to end up?
You look a little over budget.
Yeah.
Bigger buildings cost more than
Yeah.
smaller buildings.
Yeah, I
More
figured
site-
that's why I wanted to brought up.
And so this also will play into it. Ed will describe the meeting.
Yeah, look, with the size of the building right now is over, and the use of property is over 5 acres. So we're working with ONG, SLAM, and Construction Solutions to get it down. Plus, we're meeting with the state on April 7th. So hopefully they'll listen to us with the overage that they can. Usually the commissioner will let us have additional space, but we don't know that yet until we meet with them.
Is that typical?
Is it typical to be allowed? Yes.
No, to be over.
Oh,
At
it
this
varies
point.
from school to school. Mhm. It varies.
But there have been letters by the commissioner who has given school districts allowances for bigger projects. The only problem is not with us now. When you talk about that, a lot of districts did not meet their enrollment requirements, and they had to pay back money. And so we're okay with that. We gave them the 8 years and all of that. So.
Right. And in fact, your latest numbers showed an increased enrollment rather than a decrease. So that should also be helpful. So with me tonight on the Zoom, I believe, is Bill Cohn. Are you there, Bill?
I am in the audience. Right?
Welcome.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Bill.
Our landscape architect for the project, working in conjunction with a couple of others in our office. We have a full landscape department. And Bill and Spencer and Dan will work together with our civil engineers developing the site for the project. And so to that end, they have done some analysis of the site. We'll be receiving a survey, a new survey, and that'll be coming in about 2 weeks, the final version, but throughout they're going to give us some progress. And So as we gather more information, we'll have more information again to share with you. But as of now, we have done a bit of a site analysis, and we can describe to you a couple of options. You got a preview at our last meeting of where to put the building on the site. There's really not that many locations because we have the existing building and we have the existing field and track and bleacher system. So we want to make sure that we keep all of that up and running for you during construction. So Bill, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So if you have any questions, please let me know either before or after. We're flexible here. But I want to just quickly go through, won't get into detail on the site analysis. We have looked at the site extensively with the information we have thus far. As Amy pointed out, we're expecting a new survey, which will cover the entire property, including the portion of the park that we're looking at possibly using or probably using for expansion of this property. This slide demonstrates some of the constraints that we're facing on this site, mainly large grade changes from Winthrop Street up to the existing front door of the school, as well as across the parking lot, which if you stand back, the parking lot looks fairly level, but it's not. It drops about 20 feet down to the tennis court area. So there's a lot of grade change in that southern half of the site. And that actually is where we don't have a lot of topographic information at this time. So the other side of the site, on the north of the building, where all the fields are relatively level. They're within 1% or 2% of grade change. So it's a nice level area for athletic fields, which is how it's being used, which is awesome. So this is how we started our analysis. And like I said, we went into we went through a bunch of schemes and options. And one more thing I wanted to point out on the east side of the site, which is page up, is there's a large wooded area, about 200 or so feet deep to the backs of those houses on Ruland Street. And it's about 60 feet or so grade change from up on the hill at Ruland Street down to the field level. It's another constraint that sort of ties us in a little bit to what we have to work with. And so as you'll see, we basically have two broad schemes, and we'll take you through those, but it's really basically simple. Either you put a building in the field area or you put a building in the parking area. And so the balances between those two are how we are approaching the concept.
So I'll just speak to this slide quickly, Bill, to share with the committee that we've not just looked at two schemes, but we've looked at multiple. And I didn't fit all of them on here. Julia sends me new designs as she works through the program with Amy.
We look at the different building configuration on the site. Some of them are more compact, some of them are like taking advantage of the site, and we end up with the two concepts that we developed a little bit further that we would like to share with you.
So these are the two concepts. We've titled them Town Green and Pond House, and you'll see why. But these are the two that we boiled it down to after looking at a number of different options on the site.
So looking at the site again, this scheme, the Town Green scheme, the building is sort of wedged in between the northern property line and the existing school, and the stadium on the west and the hill on the east. So we positioned this one in particular in that area, so obviously the existing school can remain in place. The middle school is to the north, that box on the far end where it says number 1. And that is, you can see a parent drop-off loop there, along with about 30 parking spaces. On the other side of the school, it's separated nicely. The bus drop-off would come in from Major Dusty Drive and loop around, that's number 2. And also there's some main entrance parking, if you will, visitor and some staff parking perhaps at that area. Number 3 is where the service is proposed to be located. And this has some constraints to it in the sense that we'd have to have some logistics of getting a truck to back into a loading dock in that location. So there's some detail that we would need to work out and to make that work, and whether they exit back onto Daily Drive to the north or somehow able to turn and come back out the main way. These are some details that we would need to work out in design, which I'm confident we can do. Number 4 is the parent drop off for the high school. So in this case, it would be ideal for the parents to arrive on Daily Drive, enter in on that driveway, and then there's a long pull off there where they can stack and queue and drop off the students that would enter into the school from the east side. On the south end of the site there in the corner, number 7 is the larger fields of parking, and there they have a nice access. This layout gives you nice access into the school without having to cross major driveways. Obviously the parking driveways are there, but it's a nicely oriented for easy access to the school building. And then the complication or the constraints on this concept is that the fields now are placed at part of where the existing school is now and the parking lot. So you're constrained because it's a sloping site. And so in order to create flat field areas, we'd have to bench them in with cuts and fills, possibly steep slopes, retaining walls. And so that is also a design problem that we can solve, but it may also limit the number of fields that you are able to get. In this case, we're missing, I believe we're missing the JV softball and the, JV baseball and the practice field.
Football practice.
Football practice, correct. And then the other, you can see what we have, the tennis program is split. In order to get the soccer field in there, we put the two tennis courts over where the skate park is. And so again, we can look at how to arrange these fields when we have better survey and possibly get the tennis back together. But this was our best broad stroke at this point in time. There's also a parking lot down there by the existing parking lot at the park, which we thought would be an ideal for student parking. It's a bit far from the front door, but it is an ideal student parking lot location. And here's the existing building overlaid on top. You can see how we have a few feet, I think about 30 in between the new building and the existing up in the corner there. And also a tight pinch by the stadium. So you can see how it definitely has its constraints. One other aspect of this project, or I'm sorry, this concept, is that the eastern road on the east side of the building, on the top of the page, cuts into the hillside a little bit. Exactly, I'm not sure exact how much it's cutting in, but as that's rising, we would need to provide retaining walls, or there's rock removal, which could add cost. I think both schemes have a little bit of that, but this one I think is a little worse. So in these pros and cons we developed after reviewing the concepts in-house and amongst ourselves, and essentially what I've just reviewed with you, some of the positives and negatives of this scheme.
Right.
We don't have to go through every one, but if there are questions.
It's Amy speaking, sorry, Bill. We'll provide a copy of this as we have done at other meetings.
Yeah, I'll send it out tomorrow morning.
Okay, great.
So this is
I'm gonna share the middle and high school are colored, and then that goes away.
okay. So this is slide shows the plan organization of the town green concept, where we have a complete separation between the middle school and the high school wing, and they are both fitting into the area that they will share. So middle school is organized around the interior courtyard, which is a green space that brings a lot of daylight in the middle of the school. Administration area is always facing the main entrance. and they are connected with their portion. This middle part is zone, so the middle school is using this, and this is their gym, lockers, music area, performing arts, and their cafeteria. And high school is using this part, so they have a cafeteria on this side, kitchen and server in between that they share. So we are providing a generous lobby where you can have a nice community entrance with a school store and the other amenities. Pathways are nearby so that you can display the student work in a main lobby. And we're thinking about having a central office in this option on the ground floor, on the far end of the academic wing. But this is the now conceptual design. Now that we have a confirmed program, we will develop further one of those two options, hopefully. This is a little bit more than massing model, just to see how the building will feel tucked in a farther corner of the property. So it's away from Route 8, but it's very close to the hill. So some of the classroom will not have a wide view, but they will look into a wooded hill. And the gymnasiums and locker rooms are closer to the football fields. So it's very logical plan and a clear concept, but it provides a clear separation between two wings. It can result in a good building, but we also looked at the other option where we place the buildings near the pond on the parking lot, as Bill said, and you will see how the building responds to the site and the problem.
Take it away, Bill.
Okay, thank you. So as we said, the other option is putting the building basically in the parking lot area. Now, buildings are a little more forgiving when it comes to slopes. And because there's about a 10 to 20 foot grade change across that, we felt that we would be able to site a building here more easily than we could the number of fields that we're trying to fit. And that would allow us to put the fields on the flat area of the site where they are now. So it seems like a very logical approach. And so the other aspect to this is that it really takes advantage of the pond and the park relationship, which is pretty exciting from a designer perspective. I know Julia and I have talked about this at extent, and I think it's a great aspect of this concept. Basically, number one is where the parents would come in and loop around and drop off. And the main entrance, I guess, is at 2. I can't read the.
Yeah, 2 is the high school.
Yes, high school entrance, and then the 3 is the middle school entrance on either side of the horseshoe there. And then moving around, the bus drop off is actually a regatta style, number 4, and that is a unique design for bus drop off or parking that allows a little more efficiency of use, and also that is about a 60 or so foot wide expanse of asphalt, which can double as a parking lot for events. In addition to that area, we're still working, obviously, if this design is chosen, we can work out some of the design issues or the cons, if you will, of this. And one of them is number 5 is basically the service access. So we're looking at using the bus drop-off area when buses aren't there to service the building with trucks backing into it where the number 5 is. So we'd like to see that on the back of the building if we can. And so we'll work with the existing conditions and the design of the building to try to make that work, to get it away from the front door. But for now, the concept to us is a con for this concept, but one that we can probably work with. 6 is some basically visitor and staff parking at the front door, and then 7 could be all the general parking and also student, perhaps. There's also a lot of parking along the eastern side of the site, which would work well with athletics and for activities that perhaps drawing others from to the campus for play fields. Yeah, and here's where the existing building fits. Now, I know there's a conflict with the building overlapping. I don't know if Amy if you, or Julie, if you want to speak to that.
Well, right now we are showing part of the gymnasium that it's overlapping this, but we're still looking at this area. And when we got a survey and everything, because this portion here is not as sloping as from here down. And we may look to place the gymnasium along this side. You will see in the floor plan, we are also working with the slope, placing the auditorium that it's stepping down.
Right, and when we developed this, I also want to point out that we were maintaining your existing property line. And now that we have some acknowledgement that the mayor is comfortable with the school utilizing this portion of the park, we can look to move the building to the south. That will allow us to open up this angle and probably be able to fit the gym here. But again, we're going to wait and not promise anything until we see the survey. And we'll also at that time have information about wetlands and restrictions as far as how close we can get to the pond. But I know that we can move it further south than what we're showing it. We just don't know yet how close.
Right. We also think that the views of this building from Winthrop Street and also from Route 8 will be awesome. It will be very visible and present a nice front for the school versus the other concept is further back and removed. So the visibility will be less so.
A quick question.
Sure.
The shifting, just that direction would be south.
Yes.
Towards the pond. Is that part of this letter? I just took a quick look
Yeah,
at it. It looks
yeah.
like a major Bessie pond. So would it also involve that property as well?
Yeah.
Okay. And it also looks like Major Bessie, the drive would be shifted as well. So it would be, looks like you'd move it further east.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. I apologize.
Yeah, so like that could happen in any option that we go to. We will be maintaining or getting the information from the traffic consultant as well. So as we look forward to developing this further, the landscape architects, Bill and others have described that putting Major Bessie along this eastern edge of the property line would be more advantageous for pedestrian access from this corner and a nicer arrival. So people walking from their cars, if the parking lot is adjacent to Major Bessie, they don't have to cross the road to get into the school. So there's an advantage to flipping those. So we'd look into doing that and again, work with the traffic consultant.
Approximately, do we know the number of parking spaces that area might hold? Or is it too early?
We do, nope. I think Bill does have that. Do you have a parking count on those areas? Maybe in the previous slide.
I couldn't hear the question.
Parking count.
Oh, we're targeting about 440 or 450 total based on programming information we received. That's got to be flushed out a little more, but that's what we're looking at. This scheme's got 464.
I guess I'm just wondering if that front lot would accommodate most of the daily parking, Rob, with students, as opposed to having the students trash the fields. The number of parking.
Yeah, I mean,
So
that would be middle school, high school students, central office, all of it will be down.
Well, there's 248 spaces lining the driveway along the top. And that includes, this 248 includes spaces along the southern edge of this driveway.
Does it say 168?
166 here, if I'm reading it correctly.
You got good eyes.
Yeah.
So I guess
Not close.
staff parked out in the back.
Yeah, I get,
Yeah,
I'm
it
just
should
thinking of the walkway.
Yeah.
They'd have to walk the long way around to the building.
Right, so we haven't overlaid any accessibility and sidewalks in the athletic fields yet, but that will be a requirement. So the state requires us to have accessible paths, essentially paved sidewalks that lead to each of your athletic facilities. So we would need a path to the softball and baseball dugouts, et cetera. So as we develop that, I think that we would also extend those paths to the parking areas. And so you'll see a network of sidewalks still while trying to maintain the maximum that we can for athletic fields.
Because I happen to just, without all the issues worked out like this version, but I'm kind of reading this letter strictly, and I'm not sure it answers the question that we wanted answered. It seems that the question presented to the city was, would improvements to Major Bessie Drive be included in state reimbursement? And farther into the letter, it's acknowledged that the drive goes through other city property, which would therefore mean the current park and the parking lot. So I'm not sure that when the question was presented, that it necessarily talked about using all of that other state property. I'm just kind of reading this very strictly. I don't know, Pat, if you.
No, that's what my understanding was as well.
State property or city property?
The driveway is
City.
one thing, but when you start talking about where that number 7 is, that's not currently part of the driveway, or, I mean, however you want to look at it.
The middle of it might be.
And shifting it south from that 2 further south towards the pond, I'm not sure that's addressed either. And there's a question about if it's just a driveway and seeking reimbursement versus this more elaborate, detailed parking area and shifting the school into that area, whether that would be subject to reimbursement.
Because it talks about the driveway crossing other city property, the managed park and parking lot, and Bessie Pond. So improvements to the driveway is what the letter is contemplating, but not necessarily using the other property.
Right, I'm gonna comment on that if I could.
I'm not saying that the answer would be any different. I just don't know that the question was.
It just, this is from obviously the city. We don't know what the state or how the state would respond to the request for reimbursement for these, the work on this driveway or other areas.
I can't tell you that if you were to include this for reimbursement, you would have to go through the process of a property line change or a lot line revision, so that any of the work that we are now doing on the adjacent property that I'll just call the Bessie Pond property would have to then be included somehow through a survey and do a lot line revision.
You
to
say
the
that,
high school property.
it would be more than that. You'd have to quit claim the property.
Not if the owner is still a city. If it's still city property on both sides and it's just the park was a separate parcel, we would then have to delineate the exact property that we're taking to the park property and include that in the city's property. It's the high school property.
I think, I believe that's what's addressed in this first point.
Yeah,
okay.
the city, all city property can be owned.
Can be easy. Okay.
Right.
So this line here, which is currently the lot line for the school property relative to the park, we are proposing, something along these lines. It's not set in stone where it's currently shown, but somewhere along those lines would be to absorb this portion into the school property, so it can be, all the work on that portion can be eligible for reimbursement.
And that would just be a property line, not necessarily a limit of the surface. Just to make that.
But it also says that the Major Best Drive will continue to be the driveway into the school. So it can be moved and still name the same thing?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yes, it's a driveway. It's not. It says it's not a city
Okay.
street, right? The driveway.
Just a, I don't know.
It's
That's what it
unusual that driveways are named.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. I guess they're calling it a driveway.
Okay. So it's not.
That's something we need to investigate a little further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make sure that the city is okay with doing that.
Yeah, well,
Who maintains that parking lot now?
we do.
Yeah,
We
okay, so
maintain the
that's
parking
what I
lot
thought.
and Major Bessie Drive.
Yeah.
And
We
half the
plow
tennis
it, we
court.
plow it, also we plow it and we mow it.
Tennis court is already
We mow
over.
the
Yeah.
trees,
Yes.
you know.
And half the tennis court and some of the parking is already in.
The parking is actually just still on your own lot line, but,
Barely.
but the tennis courts definitely cross it.
We're already crossed on
Already
it,
crossed
right?
it,
That's right.
Can we go back to the other, the slide that shows
Is this the
That
one
one.
that you like?
are we gaining an athletic field? I know we're getting the practice field for the football.
You are, in this one, you also have a JV practice, a
Okay.
JV field,
Baseball.
baseball,
Yeah.
and softball could use that as well,
And you're putting the tennis courts
together.
together right up there.
Mhm.
And I know there was an issue at some point way back when about the way the baseball fields were oriented. Is that the proper orientation? Where they are
So Bill,
now?
can you speak to the orientation of the fields in this?
Yes, these are oriented, except for the JV practice field. These are oriented as pretty close to the correct orientation, within a few degrees.
So the two premier fields, softball and baseball, are correctly oriented.
Yes.
JV practice is not.
I don't mean to be repetitive, but as I understand your comment earlier, due to the state regs or whatever else, the ADA, you have to have paved walkways from the parking lot where number 8 is located, winding through these fields to the building.
That's correct. So, yes, to areas where anyone is going to go. So to your dugouts, to the sidelines of soccer fields for visitors. Is there enough space there for that? Yes, these would be like no more than 5 foot wide sidewalk. Sometimes
Scale is
48
1 inch
inches.
is 300.
So that's,
Scale is 1 inch equals 300.
can the JV practice field be turned?
Yeah.
This is likely not the final or
Okay.
everything, but this is a diagram to share that we can fit everything.
Okay.
And we're comfortable with the layout. It may not, it may shift a little as we work through it and after we get the survey.
That, the soccer field on the left is a full soccer field and a full football field.
That's correct.
That's what they wanted.
Right, in conversations, and we didn't update the graphics, Ed, but in conversations, Mario wanted us to be sure that this could also fit the appropriate area for football also. So again, it may shift, you know, the tennis courts may be oriented like 4 and 2, and then we could elongate the other fields. But we'll cross that bridge if this is the one you choose. So tonight, that's what we're looking for, but Julia still has to present the building. We can move on.
I just have one question that's more relative to this, because I'm still a little bit confused. So the lower parking lot, which is technically part of Major Bessie Drive, because we have to use that to exit. So are you thinking that the letter only addresses the road in, or?
I think the question is presented to him was that, yes, the existing major drive was the focus, and improvements meant possibly making that bigger or not, but not necessarily taking property that we don't currently use for Major Bessie Drive. So.
Okay, so I guess I'm confused because we maintain that whole lower area.
I don't think do we maintain this
Yeah.
skate park?
The parking lot?
The parking lot, yeah.
Yeah, we do the parking.
Yeah, but not the skate park.
Skate park, no.
The
So
skate, no.
I mean, the skate park is gone from there, so.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, they are trying to find out how much it would move that place to another area.
To another place, okay. Okay. Yeah, maybe, I love my dad and he's a great boy.
Maybe I didn't give them the right.
I just, I think he's answering a more narrow question than we want answered. Again, I think the answer is going to be the same, but I don't know that reading what he wrote, he's envisioning, or the city is okay with that necessarily, or they're not necessarily asking to be okay, they're just opining on state reimbursement. So I wouldn't rely on this for that state reimbursement answer, because I don't think it contemplates that.
So you're saying that the parking, I'm just asking, the parking lot is okay, but not the additional area for near Bessie Pond? Or-
I mean, if I just read this letter,
Yeah.
Major Bessie Drive is the driveway, right? It's not Major Bessie Drive and the parking lot. So, or the property adjacent to Major Bessie Drive that the school currently maintains. It's just Major Bessie Drive is what the opinion letter addresses. So it might just be as simple as including the adjacent property
Okay.
currently occupied with the parking lot.
Existing tennis courts do cross both lines.
Yeah.
So we should acknowledge that somehow as well.
Right. So really, it's even much broader than what I'm saying here, because he's just talking about the the driveway. That is all that this letter is, but not necessarily all that.
I think the question has to be presented, exactly as stated, right? You have to redraw the property line, period.
I agree. I think that's what we need to do to take this to fruition, is to propose a new boundary and make sure that the city is okay with making that boundary adjustment. Because the state is going to see that current lot line and say that's the end of the property for the high school. Nothing to the south is eligible for reimbursement. So in order to make that intermediate property line go away or lot line go away, we have to redraw it and leave some for the park, I would expect. Not going to absorb the whole thing.
Right.
But redraw it to expand the high school property.
Yeah, if you can talk about it, but if you give me a picture of what final looks like, then I can give it to the mayor and I'm going to see it tomorrow, this whole package.
As soon as we get the survey completed, we'll have a better way to identify exactly where, because we want to know where the upland boundary is for the wetland offset.
Okay.
We also want to, there's a few things that we want to sort out before we draw a line and say that's where it should be.
Didn't we take it to eminent domain because we tennis court? That's
what I was saying. Right.
I don't know if that could impact somehow wetlands.
It will. And that's part of why we want to get the survey, to be able to know exactly where things are.
Sorry.
It's always good to have two lawyers on the committee. You know?
Yeah.
No.
Remind me where we left off, Bill. Did you go through pros and cons on the other slides maybe, and we'll just share this with the committee after?
I think I concluded the site description, yes.
Okay.
That's what you're asking.
So we can look now in the plan organization for this one. We again have a middle school wing and high school wing, and they're creating this beautiful open courtyard that and the school will engage with it, that can be used for outdoor learning, for outdoor performances, or just for relaxing. So again, we are looking at the separate use of the assembly wing. Middle school has its own gymnasium, the locker rooms, and their cafeteria part, while high school has their cafeteria and the gym closer to the field. As I mentioned, this is the auditorium with the performing arts spaces that are flanking the auditorium, so that it's easy for students to bring instruments and to get to the stage. We are thinking also about being able to open the stage, maybe have a glass, operable glass wall there, so that students can still be on stage and perform, and audience can be in an open courtyard, similar like Tanglewood. So what here, and I was talking before about probably rotating this wing. This may give you a little bit more room for parking, but it can help us with the a great change, and it can help us also with the phasing. So maybe it will not approach on the building as much, but we need to investigate this. The other thing that we are anticipating with this option is entrances are on a similar level, but we may have portion of this building that is level below. And we thought this can be used for either like a preschool that can have their playground there across the front from the existing playground. And part of this we can use for mechanical spaces and buildings. But we like this almost campus feel here because the relationships are more interesting and the shape of the building really responds to the pond and site.
In this design, you have the high schoolers walking through the middle school gymnasium area?
The only thing that not really, because the gym is, their lockers are here and this is a separated. So they do, this is a crossing point. High school is going this way to their lockers and they are going this way. So there's only one crossing point for them. But we can look at that later. We were trying to be very efficient with the circulation so that we have a double loading corridor that we are like trying to not to have too many corridors because we know that we are over area, building area. So all the building looks like or it has organic shape and everything. It's very rationally organized. Like you have a block of the gymnasium because there is economy in the structure and in the simplicity. So minimizing also exterior walls. There's
And is that a 2-story or 3-story as far as the U area, the area closest to the pond, and what would be Route 8?
This is a taller building. This is a high school is always 4-story with probably another level underneath. And middle school is a 3-story building.
Yeah. Go back to the plan. So one comment, I think Julia mentioned it, but you were talking about potentially rotating that down.
Yes.
And I think by rotating the gym a little bit, when we're able to move this building a little bit further south because of the boundary line change, will allow the high school to kind of reside back here and the middle school to be here. So we'll help eliminate that crossing that's currently in this concept, which I think is very important.
Well, I think that's what there is.
Right,
And
so,
then-
and it would, we could also, yeah, you could certainly have a corridor that attaches to the backside where the
Right.
locker rooms are.
Right.
Mhm.
And then this building utilizes the grade change to its advantage, as Julia mentioned, to take advantage of a kind of a walkout on this edge that can, not only can we bury mechanicals into the grade, but then you can put the preschool.
Right, and also pathway spaces, because I think that the pathway spaces should be on display. And I think that it's a really lovely area for you to have glass walls and be able to expand. You know, if students are working on a drone project in the engineering class, they can go to the outdoors and have a patio area outside where they could then utilize it or build robots and that kind of stuff.
In a culture, because culture garden, there's multiple possibilities.
Would you have only one mechanical room for both because they could?
Yeah, it will be one mechanical group of rooms. One.
There will be a central plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then there will be satellite, you'll have to have some
data rooms
throughout.
But you'll be able to get then road access back there?
That's what we're looking into, and Bill tried to describe that when he was talking about the service entrance. Really, as we look into this and rotate it and try to, best utilize the site, we hope to be able to have a service entrance either this way, if there's space between the existing stadium and this area, or around the other way. Either, no matter what we do, we will have to have a fire lane. It doesn't necessarily have to be paved with asphalt. It can be paved with, they make grass pavers, reinforced, that, pavers that grass can grow through. And there's a number of other ways to do it so that it wouldn't look too harsh. But I think we will have to provide some amount of access around the back of the building regardless.
At the middle school, we have ground stone that's behind the building that's access for
Mhm.
fire and all that.
You're gonna need fire access.
Yeah.
Hydrants, yes.
Or for the trucks.
Right, the code requires trucks to access to a point, and then the code allows for 150 feet of hose length. But we would work with your local officials and develop that as we move forward.
A good question, because we had talked about the Route 8 noise the last meeting.
Yes.
So closer to the
I
highway,
called, they never
does it
got back to me.
really up the cost in terms of building in kind of sound barriers?
It doesn't, because today we also have a high requirement for energy efficiency, and the amount of insulation in the walls is quite robust. And I don't know if Kemp, you want to speak to this slide, but I'm sharing this because it's a school that Kemp and I worked on together in New Haven. And if you can see in this corner, it's right at the connection between the Route 34 highway and 95. And so you can imagine that this school, which is right here, this facade faces its own street, Water Street, and then directly above Water Street is the Route 34 highway. So your school will be far less impacted by noise than this one was, but just to let you know that we have had a successful, lesson learned and case study that we can draw from. In addition to, we will have an acoustic consultant on this project. The acoustic consultant will help us develop the interior spaces of important areas like your auditorium and cafeteria and other large spaces where we might need treatments like this for dampening sound. And they will also study for us the street noise and how that will interact with the building. Anything to add?
No, I think that's really all to say is we can design the exterior wall to mitigate any noise factors. That little, what we call the sail, that bowing wall, right behind that is the media center. And when you're standing in the media center, you can barely hear the traffic. You can see it going by, but you can barely hear it.
And we'll go back to get a decision on the conceptual designs, but I also wanted to put the bug in your ear that we had a request early on about taking tours of some relevant projects that might help you envision some of our design ideas and materials that we could select from and adjacencies of program areas and things like that. So I have 4 projects selected from our collective previous designs and calls in or emails in to those school districts to find out what their visitor policy is right now because of COVID, but also to find out if we can schedule a tour. So Ed, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, we were trying to get the April vacation, which is an easy
Oh,
one.
I forgot to mention that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and we can use one of our buses to take everybody together. What?
On a field trip.
Listen, it's a bus limo.
That Groton Middle School is quite close to the casinos, but I'm not suggesting anything.
So do we have dates or something? I'll send it around to everybody or no?
I'm checking with them because each district might have different.
Okay, you let me know and I'll
rates,
send it out.
but, Yeah, probably within a week of each other.
Is anybody, are you, anybody interested in taking a tour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. So I may need 2 limos.
I
That's
know a
right.
guy.
Yeah.
Real limbo. Yeah, I like the other guy.
My brother actually wants one.
So now would like to focus the group and see if we could have discussion or a vote on a preference for us to move forward with one of the 2 conceptual designs that we've shared tonight.
Did you have an exterior concept? I don't know if you can look at the for the pond.
Yeah.
Right there, okay.
It's more like a massing. And you see, this is the area that we were talking with before. This is the area that we think we can place some problem also in, but we like having a taller building on this side. And it can really have a nice presence on the Route 8 and nice presence from the pond.
Again, once we have the survey information, that might change a little bit. What we're showing here.
No.
Would the pond need to be enclosed or? Well, preschool and. The preschool playground will be required to be enclosed, and that's a part of the prescriptive nature of the preschool anyway. Whether or not you need a fence line at the school is something that we'll talk about in upcoming security committee meetings. We should also talk about that in relation to this lot line adjustment and whether the city would like a fence at that part or not.
I almost think the pond would provide more security because it would be harder to access the back of the building if they had to swim across the pond.
Except in winter.
Yeah. I like the pond one. I also, one of the buildings you guys did in, it was Pawtucket, has the school right at the highway. And it's definitely when you drive by, like eye-catching, like what is that?
Yeah, no.
And I think that would be good, especially for commuters like that, going back and forth in Winston and New York people.
By your assessment, it had fewer cons as well, right?
It does. It's easier for a building to take up site elevation changes than it is for fields. So I think that the big takeaway is that you could get your full request of programs for the athletic fields and still your full request for the school program.
And also you think without overlapping, it can be adjusted.
We're gonna work our hardest on that,
Would
absolutely.
the choice of this design here be contingent upon that though? Of not overlapping the gymnasium?
It's something that I don't wanna be able, I'm not able to promise that at this moment.
We might be able to fit the gymnasium without overlapping, but locals may overlap. So we need to investigate a little bit more. We already did an option where we're turning it, and this also gives you more like a presence along Route 8 because it builds this like streetscape. But we need to test it one more time.
So I would say that we would also be working very closely with ONG to come up with the phasing if it's required. That we would work to provide at least one of the 2 major gymnasiums that are in the program right away off of your existing building footprint. And if we're not successful in getting the entire building off of your existing building footprint, that you could tear down the building and then finish with just the other gymnasium, for example, and that perhaps during that 1 year of overlap, while the gym is being finished, the high school and the middle school might have to share one gym.
Well, if the building is, if the building it and the middle school is not there yet, then they can.
Problem solved.
Yeah.
Construction, ONG can probably chime in on this. This for whatever area you need for construction material and trucks, everything. Do you have a preference, whether it be the pod or the green, to make a
As far
difference?
as the construction materials and laydown, the only thing that I would opine on as far as between the two options is if you think about the pond scheme is in the parking lot,
Right.
your current parking lot, and it also may affect the bus drop off. In other words, this is more, I'll say, intrusive to the school function as opposed to the other option, which is building in a green area, right? You can start right away. There's nothing we gotta do to prep, you can just get going. And this one, we'll have to prepare parking, obviously, and we'll have to, do some work before we actually get started on the building. So as far as the laydown and all that, we'll work out all of that. But from a timing perspective, the other one, we can just get started right away. Whereas this one is a little more fussy. Not that we can't go through it, but this one is just a little more fussy of an option.
One point to that point, Laurel, is that if this portion were built, say, in the summer before you start to do this building, that can then double as your, it'll take place in the parking that you're losing here, it'll be over here. So that's one thing to consider.
And also, like, this one has a more less pavement because its parking is right there, right in the school, doesn't need to drag through all property to get.
And I think on the other one, the road in, there wasn't a spot for it, it seemed.
This one is essentially keeping what's there.
Right, but look at Major Best Drive, it goes right through the school.
Correct.
Where would the drop off be for busing and such?
Well,
you know?
during construction, your existing parking area
parking
would
lot.
exist.
Okay, gotcha.
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, this gives you a good flavor, so if we're building there, obviously your parking lot, your front entrance, all of that, all remains as is.
Mhm.
Whereas we will have to work out a plan with how the school is gonna operate and then trying to build right in your front door, basically.
Right, I usually talk about separation between construction and school in these types of projects. So school would operate here, construction would operate over there on that concept. And then on
We
the
could
other
do
one,
the same thing on this
it's a
one.
little, it's very similar, but it's a little bit more complicated because of the potential loss of your current bus loop right there. So this would still be construction and then school.
And this is the
In the
concept where we get all the
access
fields in.
Yeah.
The other one,
That's
we can
correct.
lose
Yeah,
something,
between the
right?
stadium,
Okay.
the school, the highway, the pond, we're situating, we're tucking it right into a spot, whether not a room. Like Laura said, we can plan for it, but it's.
It's
It's shoehorned in. Same reason why we can't promise to stay off of the existing building, but we're gonna try our hardest. Is because it's got constraints. It's got the highway, it's got Bessie Pond. Here, when we were building here, you might recall that Bill did mention, we have to move the existing back driveway into the hillside. But even though there's a hillside here, it's less of a constraint than a pond is, right? And it's certainly less of a constraint than Route 8 is. So we can move it.
And then those beautiful views of the pond, if you have a 4-story building, they will really see it. I think it's always nice to think what you prefer to see after all.
Yeah.
Any construction is pain and during duration. I mean, it's always, so would you like to see it building here or over there?
I think one way to describe this concept that we've talked about in our office is that it's really the highest and best use of the site acreage, because you're putting the building that can accept topography change in the space where there's topography, and you're preserving the flat areas for the fields. Yes, it'll have some logistics that need to be sorted out, but not to mention you also have a brand new flagship school for the city of Torrington right on Route 8, taking advantage of the views of the pond and just announcing itself to the community. I think that's very
It's more
positive.
impressive, where the other way was more like a square building.
It's a background.
Pat has.
Yeah.
To address your traffic issues and construction issues and whatever else during the construction phase, could you utilize that daily drive? If we're going with that concept, the pond school, pick up some of the traffic on that daily drive, maybe widen the driveway back there now, sooner rather than later. That'll give you parking, that'll give you maybe an alternative drop-off spot,
Right.
as opposed to coming in the front.
So the
off
theme
of-
for this, remember all that parking that was along the back? It's almost like we have to build that before we start our building.
Right. You have to do it anyway.
We have to do
Right.
it anyway, but it prohibits us starting.
Yeah, understood.
So we typically term that as an enabling project. So, this might be an enabling project to offset the loss of this parking here. And then similarly, that could be done in advance as well.
Especially if it's in the back by the tech. They can walk right through the tech wing and into the school.
Yeah.
Right, you could utilize this area
Yeah.
as a main entrance, so to speak, for your bus drop off if you needed to. And I think we'll go through a number of different iterations to utilize the existing building and drop off this.
So all the parking that's there in the beginning, we need some too. So
Yes, you do.
But like, at the original one, you were gonna blacktop off some of the area that was where the building was gonna be built.
Yeah, well, here's where you get in the weeds on this stuff, because we're already talking being over budget. Yeah, you're gonna have to build a big parking field with drainage and everything else that goes along in the back. Depending on what you get down below, if it's 168 parking spaces, between the crews and the teachers and everybody else, you're gonna need a lot of parking.
Mhm.
So you lose all this parking here, we're gonna spend a lot more on site work.
Yeah, 248 is.
I don't know what the
you can
cut
pick up
is,
here.
I don't know where that material is gonna go, but if you got 100,000 yards of material, I don't know what it is, I'm guessing, it's gonna be exported, or it's gonna be used on site, but I think ONG really needs to look at it. I mean, it could be a lot of money, and at least we should look at both, in my opinion, to see what may hinder us down the road or cause issues.
Yeah, and I think though, to make some of those decisions, we have to let the design evolve, right? I mean, there's only, we have to really know where are we with grades and cuts and fills, and so it's, getting back to, I forgot, I think Julia said this, is that I think, like you said, you hired us to help work out some of these problems logistically, and I think that I wouldn't necessarily let some inconvenience either by the occupants or by construction hinder the decision. I think you owe it to yourself to make a decision that's what you want at the end of the day. And we've got 3 design phases to figure out those details of where parking gets built or things like that. And I mean, it's just, I wouldn't let you gotta do what's right for the long term of the school. I mean, as much as my peers at the company who will be building this will probably kill me when they hear about it.
You want it to be what you really want it to be.
Right.
Well, we don't want to be taking stuff, I'm not taking a side, but we don't want to be taking stuff out at the end either to make it fit. I don't think we do, because that's what we've done on every other program that's been built, not necessarily this school, not this school, but other programs. The windows out, change the roof. down.
All throughout, there will be tough decisions
Right.
to stay on budget. There's no doubt about it. But that's why we have a good working relationship with ONG and with CSG, and we'll work through all that together.
Yeah, Fiona.
So in the original drawings, my concern was always how we would secure that site with the location of the old building. Did you guys look at this at all from security or access to the site? Because it seems like.
Are you talking about long-term security or during construction?
Long-term.
Mhm.
I'm just thinking that having the site path of the high school personnel in the entrance would be better than someone coming into the parking lot and it being, 5 minutes before high school staff can see. But I don't know if that was looked at. I'm just curious.
Just worried about people coming into this.
So
before
this
the-
seems like a much more secure that we could
Oh,
manage
for the other
versus
students.
the building being in the back
Right.
and people
Yeah.
having all this entrance.
I would agree with you on that. I mean, there will be most likely some cameras.
Blind sight, that's actually.
Yeah. Cameras on the entrance drive anyhow, but yeah, line of sight is, I think, more optimized to the main entrance on this one.
Something that I don't think we pointed out because we only shared with you a first floor plan. We didn't want to get into the weeds of the adjacencies of inside the building yet, because we're really just looking for this big picture decision today. But to your point about security and having eyes on the entrance, this version has middle school administration and high school administration, both facing front. And then on an upper level on the same wing where, right, kind of in this corner where front and center will be your central administration offices. So separate door and separate access, whether it be the stairs or elevator dedicated, but they'll also have eyes on the school. So I think you're getting all three administrations to face forward in this version. The other one, the middle school really had a separate view than the high school.
Robin first.
I know we talked a little bit the last time, and I do love this design, the noise factor of the kids, the learning environment in the high school. Can you just explain to me how we're gonna work with that during the day as much as possible? Because this seems closer, than the other one.
So
To
if I
the
can
grade?
explain, like a major high school wing is this part, and it's facing south and north, which is really good, and facing the pond.
Yeah.
So this zone is one that might be.
I'm sorry, I meant so as you're building and we're in the other building.
Oh, you're talking about during construction.
Oh,
Sorry. This, just because, I mean, it was the same issue in the back, but I think there's gonna be more impact here. And again, I do love this, but if we somehow have to work with that and figure it out.
Right. O&G will be separating the construction site from the building at all phases. So when they first start out, I don't know if they're gonna build this first and work their way closer, or how this is not up to me. But they do provide hard barriers where necessary between construction.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes it's a fence, sometimes it's a fence with kind of a screen for visual impact, and sometimes it's a plywood wall, essentially.
Right, we're doing one, it's for an elementary school, and we're building a new building in some spots like 20 feet, 20 feet off of the existing school, and it's where the preschool students are in there.
It
right?
is.
So it's, again, to say that
Those who get most distracted.
there's not going to be any noise, there is going to be noise, but as far as the actual hazard of something from construction affecting the school, we engineer those barriers into it to prevent something from happening. In spots where a hard barrier is needed, rather than a chain link fence with privacy screen, a hard barrier is put in place.
Just one more quick thing. When are we gonna have our geotech? When are you gonna start doing geotech work?
After we find out where the foundations are gonna go.
All right, so that's my, the problem with this site, I'm not sure if they built this building or not, but they filled in that whole parking lot and they filled in the lower parking lot. If that material is peat moss, for instance, I don't know what it's there, but you're gonna have, Walty likes helical piers and all that kind of stuff. Those are costs that may want to be considered, and they could run into lots of money versus being over in the fields, which may be rock, for instance. I don't know, but it could be 7 figures as well.
We don't know in either location, you're correct.
I know, so maybe should we do at least some probing, or no?
Well, we've done geotech investigations in a phased manner on past projects where we get, a few borings to get a good general character of the site in a few areas.
And that's an ONG question, but.
Well, that's one of the first things we're going to do. We'll do some initial ones, right? So we can figure out where we are. And we did do the initial school, but I doubt.
No, you don't have, I know that, but if you decide you're gonna put the foundations there and you find out you need piers throughout the building, I don't know.
Yeah,
it's a surprise.
Yeah, I think the issue here is that we collectively need a decision to move forward because we know that we are up against a very tight time frame already. And I know you're torn between having more information to make a more educated decision, but.
Well, I know we're over already. I'm just saying, you can get a geotech guy out there one day, say a week, he'll be there, and just probe the parking lot. The parking lot looks okay. I like that layout. I like it a lot, but you know what that stuff costs.
Yeah.
That's a big change order if that's all he'll appears or whatever.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be a change order.
Well, let's put it this way: it'll be more than you might expect for spread the footings and the remaining kind of concrete you're gonna
We'll
pour.
have to get
It's a ton of money.
into the estimate already.
And I know Multi loves this.
We're gonna get
Yeah,
real
he's the-
creative
he's
and
the
floor
doctor
one and
of
two will be underground. then.
Herb Lobdell was a doctor. He's dead though.
Can I?
Anyway, it's a concern. But I like that.
Actually, I didn't mean to jump over you.
No, I'm done with it.
The other idea did share the burden of incoming traffic a little bit, although I worried about daily drive coming in, but, so this is still only one ingress for about 1,000 students. I know that doesn't translate into cars, but, and it's just conceptual, but, again, as a user of that one entrance into a school, the line has in many years gone up past off the screen of just people and buses trying to get in. So I just don't know if that road can be bigger, double laned, or I know there seems to be a couple of loops there, but it's still just one getting into that area and one getting out.
Yeah, again, I think this is, highly conceptual, but Bill, if you're still on and you're watching me point, you can stop me if I misspeak, but
He can't see you.
I think, this would be the main bus loop. And then that could still be a kind of swap loop that comes around, and perhaps this parent drop loop gets reoriented to kind of do something like that. I think it can work. It just needs to be massaged.
Any other questions before? Oh, it's
Go
okay.
ahead. Just to respond to your question, we can initiate Welty to get out there and do a preliminary.
Well, that would be my suggestion. It's $10,000.
Yeah.
You have money in there anyway. I mean,
We do. It's just 2 mobilizations, just gets,
yeah, but
a little bit more. But, we can get a few characterization borings out there. We were hoping to get some existing or some past boring data. We haven't been able to find it.
well, all you can do is look at the survey we received from the city. You can see that the whole parking lot is all filled from swamp. It used to be the pond where the major Bessie Drive is. That whole area used to be part of the pond.
Yeah, it's a valid concern. We will look into that.
Yeah, I think they filled both sides, but
Do we have a consensus, either the pond or this is called?
This is Pond Scheme. The other
Pond
one
House.
is
Town Square.
Town Square.
I have a question, so if we can't get that other area, does that put this one out of the running, or?
Probably, because we're only put you parking.
Oh, we can't get.
You talked about redrawing the lot line?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Both of our schemes did utilize that area near the skate park.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Yeah. Oh, Mario's there.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna, listen, I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between what the mayor said to Ed and I and what appears on that letter. Ed, you correct me if I'm wrong, I left that meeting, she's talking about moving the skate park, take it, do whatever you need to do with it, we gotta get the reimbursement, blah, blah, blah. The letter, I would admit, doesn't clearly state that, so I think you guys are on the right path. You get a new survey that shows exactly what we want. We show the mayor and get another letter saying, yeah, it's all yours. But we left there that day and she was moving the skate park. She couldn't move it fast enough, actually.
Yeah, getting pricing to have them move it.
That's good.
Yeah.
But maybe she needs that. I mean, maybe her father needs to at least comment.
Yeah.
Maybe she doesn't have the right to do it.
I just think in the telephone conversation, it
That's right. I
clearly
agree
didn't
with
get
you.
to him the way it was presented, so.
Yeah, once we have the survey, we can show up and so forth. Yeah.
You're gonna call your father tonight?
On the way home.
Or, yeah, maybe we'll read it together.
But Mario's right.
He's watching.
When we spoke to the mayor, get rid of the skate, that's ours. So,
But it's good to have 2 lawyers.
yeah. Yes.
You don't find out until later.
Right.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I like the pond one.
okay.
Yeah. Would the design of the pond one fit in the town green? You know what I mean, how it's shaped?
Well, we would have to start from scratch because you want your gymnasium to be closest to the field.
Right,
You want
right.
your locker rooms.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
To reverse it.
Yeah, you would have to reverse
Yeah.
it and it would be up against the.
Casey, want to make that motion?
Which
That would
is
lose the
not-
whole.
Oh, am I making a motion? We're gonna vote on this? Or we
Yeah.
just getting a general consensus? Sure, I'll make a motion that we vote on the pond.
Fine. Do I have a second? Second. Discussion.
I would just say, I agree, but if we find out there are significant dollar issues, you should at least let us know.
Of course.
Before we get too far down the
If
road.
there are any red flags, we would bring them immediately.
Well, no, they weren't going to the geotech later.
So maybe
Well,
we just
has
amend
been
the
on this
motion
site
to be
before?
conditional.
I would expect to have knowledge.
I've
when we
used
have
this,
files.
I use this father. All I know is he does like to over design. According to.
I thought we had, when we did the fields, the stadium, I thought we had borings, but I'm not sure. Got to ask Mario.
What's the question, Ed?
If we had borings when we did the
Yes,
field.
I'm sure
We
you
just
did.
need
we
the
did.
park. We need the park lot.
Yeah, I know.
and we still hit ledge.
We don't even have the survey from the new field. So we're looking for that as well.
Didn't,
Survey
He
for
sent
the
it to you?
new field.
No,
We don't have the
Oh, for
survey
the
or the design drawings for the field project we would love to get.
okay.
We have the original survey, the
Mario,
way it was before you redid the field. So we have the original condition before the new
we should
field.
have it.
Oh, yeah, okay.
John should have those in his office.
Who has it?
John should have those.
Yeah, yes.
okay, I'll have him look because I also have to return the building drawing funds that he gave
Yeah.
me.
Give him a call tomorrow.
Sure.
Okay. So there's a motion? Oh, go.
Should the motion be amended?
Yep,
On the
If-
condition,
on a condition if they agree.
if the,
And the.
Yeah, they agree.
and
The preliminary survey.
the preliminary survey comes out in our favor.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So-
based on Gary's request. is what I'm talking about, yeah.
Okay. Everybody agree with? Okay.
Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Great.
Great. Mara, you in favor?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Just to let you know, Amy will find out about the dates for the tours. We'll be at the state on Wednesday, April 7th. Next meeting, Yes.
Real quick. We're gonna have a subcommittee meeting to talk about-
yes, I'm just gonna,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I was gonna bring up. So,
You're ahead of yourself.
Yeah, don't we have to talk about commissioners?
so next meeting, Amy, instead of the next April Fools, we'll go to the 8th. Is that okay?
That's fine.
And we'll have a meeting before that, 5 o'clock for the 8th, Thursday, the 8th. April, yes, yes.
At 5 o'clock or at 5:30?
5 o'clock for the subcommittee and 5:30 for the regular committee. So the subcommittee can make the recommendation to us and to city council. I'm sorry?
Have a discussion.
Whatever.
Well, no, there's three and three. There's gonna be three city council
Right.
members.
Yeah, whatever you want. You want to,
I think we need an hour.
okay,
My opinion, but-
4:30? Okay, 4:30, okay.
That's for the-
Yeah,
We need a formal vote on authorizing us to go into schematic.
Do we?
I'm asking.
No,
This essentially does it. I mean, it.
yeah,
it's
it does,
selected a
yeah.
concept.
Yeah.
You're essentially moving forward.
Yeah.
If you want a formality, you can, otherwise.
If you get into trouble, we never heard of you.
We know nothing.
Yeah,
No, nothing.
but I just know I'm not gonna be here on the 8th.
Okay,
I'll be gone that week.
you can zoom in.
I can zoom in maybe.
Where you going, kids? Grandkids to worry about.
Up the Cape with the giglios.
Ed,
Yeah. What, Mario?
someone's saying Ed.
Yeah,
I forgot number 7, comments.
Oh, that's
for the
right.
order.
oh, yeah, yeah.
We didn't finish 6, we didn't do B.
Well, it's in the
Beginning.
agenda, so you have it, right?
We don't have to vote on it.
No, because we didn't get it back, just I want to give you the RFQ. Comments with a good, no,
No,
no, Casey, anything?
No.
And then.
No. Fiona, comments, anything? Sue F,
No, thank you.
Donna, Robin,
All set, thank you.
Sue L,
Thank you for all your hard work.
Ellen,
Yeah, phenomenal. Thank you.
No.
We're doing good.
John,
All set.
Kat.
Good.
Okay, take water, and if there's a sandwich left, take it. But leave a couple of potato chips for Mario.
Thank you, buddy.
And chocolate chip cookies you want. Motion to adjourn.
Right.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Jerry and John.